This week on Inside Athletic Training, we welcome in Corey Tremble, the Director of Athletic Training and Rehabilitation for the Miami Marlins. Enjoy the show. All right, Corey, welcome back to the podcast. I believe your second or third appearance here on Inside Athletic Training, this time for episode number 81. Very excited to have you on this time to discuss your new role with the Miami Marlins, Director of Athletic Training and Rehab. First of all, congratulations on that. Before we get into your role with the club now and plans for the future in Miami, let's give the listeners a bit of background about you for those who didn't hear you on the show a couple times. Talk about your journey through pro baseball and also kind of what inspired you to get into athletic training.
Yeah, absolutely, Sam. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I love coming on and chopping it up with you. So this is, once again, a great opportunity. So the more I reflect back at my years as an athletic trainer and where I started and where I've come from and what I've kind of became, I've just been standing on the shoulder of giants the whole time, right? So early on, when I was in high school, I identified that I probably wasn't going to go pro in Major League Baseball. I just felt like my time was running out as a player. So I figured, let's look at another avenue. And again, I love telling this story because the Yankees, I grew up in North Jersey, so the Yankees are the big team, and their athletic trainers were celebrities just like Mattingly and Jeter and all those players of that era. And so Gene Monahan and Steve Donahue were always names that I would hear on TV. So I always thought that would be a cool job. I didn't know what it was, but ultimately I had an athletic trainer in high school by the name of Rob Rayberg, who is a NATA Hall of Famer now and is big in emergency medicine. And he actually is the head of all the spotters for the NFL. And Rob was our high school athletic trainer and kind of got me into it and showed me the ropes and showed me what it was all about. And that's when I moved on to college. I knew I wasn't going to walk to school in the snow, so I went down to college at Florida Southern for my undergrad, and right there in Lakeland, Florida, beautiful Lakeland, Florida, right smack dab in the middle of the state. And never went before to Lakeland, Florida, didn't know what it was, and showed up day one, and that was my first day at Florida Southern. And lo and behold, my program director is a woman by the name of Sue Stanley Green, and Hall of Fame athletic trainer as well, the first woman to ever work at SEC football at the University of Kentucky. And she took me under her wing early on and, had to kick me in the butt a few times. And I just realized that now it went from something that I thought was cool to now this is what I wanted to do for a living. And that parlayed into an internship with the Tigers. Right around the corner from where I went to school. So that was another great opportunity where I worked with, Kevin Rand and Doug Teeter for many years and consider them both huge mentors of mine. But I knew also that I needed to have a little bit more than just Lakeland, Florida under my belt. So then I went to grad school. I was a grad assistant at University of South Florida with their baseball team. And I had just some unbelievable experiences, both good, both challenging and kind of N of ones that I've never had since then in my career, but it was just a great growth time for me. And then moving on to working full time for the Tigers after that, moving my way up into the medical coordinator role where I spent 11 years and thought that this is where I needed to be. And this is what I was doing. And I was just waiting my time. And that's where I hope a lot of our conversation goes in this podcast, because that's when things really changed for me in my career, was understanding that I really had to take more ownership of my career and where it was going and what I was doing. So that's when I decided not to come back to the Tigers after the 23 season. And I moved on to the Rangers as a consultant originally, and then came full time on with them. And then that has brought me up to where I'm at currently, which is the Director of Athletic Training and Rehabilitation for the Miami Marlins, overseeing the entire medical department.
Yeah, really an awesome story for those who don't know Corey. Hardworking guy, led the Tigers minor league program for so long, and honestly, just bet on yourself, which we'll get into, which I think is awesome. One more kind of tidbit before we move on to your professional experience. Super passionate about education. You are earned your doctorate in athletic training recently. when you're busy working in the athletic training world, pro baseball specifically, basically no time for yourself. How do you decide that that's a good idea to go back to school, and how do you balance doing that
Sure.
while you're still trying to eventually get to the big leagues like you have now?
Sure, and it's a great kind of topic that I love talking about. I was lucky enough to find a program at Florida International University and their DAT program that really kind of fit what I was looking for. And I think ultimately it was just a collision course of some topics that I was really passionate about, and leadership and team building was kind of where I was seeing my career go versus the clinical side of the player facing one-on-one on a
Mm-hmm.
daily basis. And it just seemed like it fit really well. And I think that's what it came down to. It was finding where I was going with my career, finding what was passionate to me, and then matching that up with a program. And that's what a lot of the advanced degrees are really kind of pushing towards, is like,
Mm-hmm.
where is your value? Where do you see your value? Where do you see the value of what you're trying to accomplish? And then just kind of matching that up. And I would say that anybody that is looking for that next step in their career, looking to go back to school, whether that be on the clinical side or whether it be more, leadership based or educational based or academic based on the back end. I think it's great, but trying to find that match of what you're trying to accomplish so that the work becomes pretty easy, even while you're trying to maybe progress your career or do your day-to-day job.
Yeah. And talking, you mentioned briefly about your decision to leave the Tigers, the 23 season. You grew up with the Tigers, like you said, Lakeland, Florida, for many years. Worked under Kevin Rand, Doug Teeter, Matt Rankin, all the old timers with the Tigers. Must have been a difficult decision. You were betting on yourself, like I said, to go find something that fit you better, a new experience, a new location. And I think your story and your career path is different than many in that you didn't go from an affiliate level to the coordinator to an assistant athletic trainer in the big leagues. You found out what you wanted to do leadership wise and what you were most passionate about, and kind of carved out roles with clubs that fit best for you. How did you gain the courage to do that? Stay confident throughout the process, knowing that your kind of path and career was somewhat different than most people who were the minor league coordinator for a club.
Yeah, so it was definitely a leap of faith. It was definitely betting on myself. It was definitely a difficult decision and conversation that my wife and I had for many months leading up to it. She's a college professor in Michigan, so obviously her career is very important to her as well. So we just decided as a family that, hey, look, this might be the time where, if things aren't moving in the direction that I had hoped for professionally with the Tigers, that this would be an opportunity to maybe pivot and look to something new. And I think what ultimately it came down to was, for many, many, many years, and I think there's a lot of athletic trainers, not just in baseball, but in any area of athletic training, is that your job and your day to day start kind of defining you as a
Mm-hmm.
person. And again, I don't think that that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a good thing. I think it's just something that ends up happening because we invest so much of ourselves, or so much of our time, so much of our being into our athletes, into our stakeholders, all of this, that it becomes a bigger part of you than probably you set out for. And
Yeah.
with that comes this inability to feel that you can do anything different or move on from what you're currently doing, because it's just such a big part of you. And I think that the DAT program at FIU had a lot to do with it. Starting to see different thought processes and ideas and roles really kind of set me up to look and say, hey, look, I'm going to be okay. We're going to be okay, my wife and I, that
Mm-hmm.
I can look elsewhere and see what else is out there. Because again, there's 30 teams, and then there's all these college teams and all these high schools and all these other areas where you can make a difference and advocate for athletic training and be a bigger than yourself part of athletic training. And it doesn't have to just be locked into one logo. And
Yep.
until I finally took that leap and said, okay, I'm going to try to look for a different logo here, I didn't even think that it was possible. So when I made that decision, and again, I still have tons of friends and colleagues at the Tigers that I think the world of and think that what they're doing over there is great. I just knew for me, I needed something new. I needed something different, and that's when I reached out to two of my biggest mentors, and Jamie Reed and Dr. Keith Meister, and just said, "Hey, look, guys, here's what we're doing. Here's what we're thinking. What do you got?" And they couldn't have been more supportive. And then, to them, they said, "We're going to have something for you over here in Texas." And it kind of mapped out from there. And again, I was filling some void of areas that I think I do well, that they thought I did well and could help their organization. And it was a really good fit. So just doing that and understanding that I have value past just the job that I was doing with the Tigers and all this and understanding that other stakeholders could value me as well. It was such a growth moment for me to know that I was going to be okay. And then, it just parlayed into something even bigger than that. Came full time with the Rangers. And then, when I'm starting to look at the Marlins situation, it was, again, a lot of the areas of growth that I've had over the last few years of leadership and team building. That's what they were looking for in this role. And again, it's not conventional. Usually you go from minor league athletic trainer to coordinator to assistant to head to a director level. That's usually the steps. But again, hopefully I'm the pioneer or the trailblazer or whatever word you want to use that could say like, hey, look, you don't have to do that, because ultimately we're looking to put people in roles where they will have the biggest benefit to an organization and also have the most success.
I think that's a great point for, even students out there who are going to get their first internship, this coming February or something. You're probably hiring interns right now. Just because you aren't excelling with your hands on a player or this or that, or you're struggling with one area, always going to be opportunities. It might be unconventional like yours, even if you say that it's not like you something terribly different. But there's always an opportunity if you're persistent, if you're looking forward, and if you're willing to kind of bet on yourself, like you mentioned, and take a leap of faith. You were with the Tigers forever, seemingly since I knew you back in 2010. Was there ever a part of you that, thought, well, I'll just stick it out with the Tigers. This is the logo that I wear. I'm loyal. Kevin Rand, Matt Rankin, Doug Teeter, all those guys that you probably felt like you owed something to stay there. Did that come to mind throughout the process?
Oh, for sure. I mean, that was a big piece to it. And it was, then some other colleagues on the strength and conditioning and the coaching side too, that kind of played into that, because again, it was, everyone loves being told they do a good job. And there were a lot of people there that kind of did tell me that from time to time. So absolutely. It was like, am I giving up on these staff members? And then also, in the roles that I had, I was so player facing with certain players for so long on the rehab side. And, they would call me in the off season for advice and help and all these things. And am I giving up on them? And absolutely, that was a big piece to it. But explaining to it and saying that I had a plan and this was going to be my reason and here's how I'm going to get to where I need to get to. Once I started mapping that out for people, it was really difficult for them to say anything but good luck and you're going to do it.
Yep, definitely. And moving on, like you said, you talked to Dr. Meister, who's obviously a legend in the field, and same for Jamie Reed and Matt Lucero and everybody in Texas. Awesome staff coming off a World Series. I'm sure you had questions of whether you would fit in there or there was opportunity there. Turned out to work out, started as a consultant, like you mentioned, but then moved into a full-time role with the Rangers there. What'd you learn from just spending time with Dr. Meister and Jamie every day? Two guys who seemingly have done it all. Did they, kind of spark new interest in you, new learnings? What were the key lessons that you took away from your year in Texas?
Sure. The main thing was that there's 1,000 ways to do a lot of things in this game. And I think that, when you're with a club for a long time and you've heard, people say it's the Dodger way or it's the Yankee way or, anything like that, sure, there's not to take any of the success away from clubs that use that, or this
Hmm.
is our culture, but understanding that there's numerous ways to do things. So coming over and having an open mind of I want to see how things are done, and realizing like, oh, okay, we did it similar over there, in Detroit, and okay, it does work, and oh, I never thought of it that way. But I think the main piece that I learned from Jamie and Keith, and this, I do feel that they would hope that this is what I would say their biggest teachable moment was, just driving home how all of this revolves around relationships. It's all
Hmm.
about relationships. It's not how smart you are. It's not how skilled you are on the table. It's not everything that goes along with being an athletic trainer is great on the clinical side, but if you don't have relationships with people and you don't start the trust building early on with these people, there is no way that they're going to get better. There's
Hmm.
no way that they're going to feel comfortable in your care. And I think that that's such a rose-colored glasses way of looking at things. But I do feel the more and more I'm around people like Jamie and Keith and Matt Lucero, that that I noticed at Texas that nobody seemed to be upset with each other. Everybody really seemed to get along and like each other because, again,
Yeah.
they just were so relationship forward, and they got to know people and players at a personal level, and look past just the you as a player, or you as a coach, or you as a strength and conditioning coordinator, or whatever, right? It was more than that. And so to me, it always has been about relationships, but that just really drove me home how successful those individuals in Texas are, and their careers they've had, and it all revolves around the relationships they built.
And I think that a lot of staffs across the league have leaders in place who've been there for a long time. One that comes to mind outside of Texas is Arizona with Ken Crenshaw and the relationships that he's built and how, open and warm and communicative they are with everybody and just wanting people to feel like they're a part of something bigger. I think that's key, and you really feel that in Texas as well, much like Arizona and many places throughout the league, if not all of them. Corey, you talked about trust. You said earlier on you probably felt a little like you were letting people down, lack of trust at the end with the Tigers, and just people trusted you to stay there. You get to Texas for a year, and you're on the move again to Miami. Was there ever a point in your mind where you thought, well, it might be better for me to stick it out somewhere, in Texas for longer because how long I was with the Tigers, or how, I don't want to jump from one thing to the next. How did you mentally, you and your family come to the decision where you were going to start interviewing for the Miami position and ultimately accepting the offer when that came?
Sure. No, leaving Texas was a very difficult decision because I really enjoyed working with the people, from player
Hmm.
development to the medical staff to the front office. They were the ones that, again, if we're talking about trust and loyalty and all that kind of stuff, they were the ones that took somebody that was unemployed, and said, "Hey, we're going to give you this made-up position that we're going to try to figure out, and this is where you're going to be." And it was people like Napoleon Pichardo, who's the VP of Performance over there, and Nappy has not only become a huge mentor of mine, but a close friend. And
Yep.
again, these were people that didn't know me and said, "We're going to trust this guy in these roles and in these parts of our organization." So it was very difficult, and I think that the main piece of coming over to the Marlins, and why when I started interviewing for the position, was basically the way Peter Bendix, our president, and Gabe Kapler, our assistant general manager here, really laid out their vision of what they thought of this position. And it wasn't just going to be a position that was admin focused only, and maybe you did the
Hmm.
draft, and maybe you do work comp, and it's just taking things off of the head athletic trainer's plate and responsibility, and that's it. Where it's more, no, we're looking for you to be a team leader. We're looking for you to be a creator, someone that collaborates, someone that makes their staff better, grows their staff. So all the main bullet points that I've been really working towards and enjoying on the day-to-day basis with Texas was now going to be here just at a magnified level.
Hmm. Do you think that gaining experience outside of Detroit and into Texas, is really shaping the way that you build. We're going to get into a ton of stuff about the Marlins shortly, but do you think that the multiple exposure to multiple organizations is really key in terms of how you visualize and build your staff in Miami?
For sure, because and I joke about this, and a lot of people will chuckle, but again, like I think back to when I was early in my career with Detroit and I was a young coordinator and everything. I was a terrible leader. I was not good. I thought it was charging the hill first and grabbing the flag and all the autocratic type leadership
Yeah.
mentalities, because again, I'd seen it done that way. I thought like, okay, this is how I have to do it because this is what I thought leaders did, and I couldn't have been more wrong. And what I was fogged with so much in Detroit, especially early on in my career, was I was so worried about climbing the ladder that I didn't hold it enough for a lot of the people that
Hmm.
I worked with and had on my team. And I regret that to this day, that I looked at my leadership as more, if I did really well, then everybody else was going to just be in the shadow of that really well, and that would be okay. And it took me a long time to realize that's just not the way it is. And the last few years with the Tigers, I can say that because my staff called me out and said, "Hey, look, this isn't working. We need to talk about this." And it was like the most slap in the face I'd ever felt in my career. And I thought, wow, this is exactly what I needed. And it was, instead of becoming someone that cowered by that, I took it as my opportunity to help the staff get better. And that's when I really started going, okay, I can be the person at the end of the line, just helping everybody move forward. And in Texas, that's really what I was able to even take that next step with,
Hmm.
because I wasn't asked to do any of the major, hey, we need you to do X, Y, and Z. We just want you to run alongside these people and help them. And it just helped me really grow in that regard, so that when an opportunity like the one the Marlins had really kind of fit well with what I had already been doing and where I saw myself going.
Yeah, I love the line about holding the ladder for others. You probably get to a point in your career where you think you need to exert more leadership and more, feel like a dictator at times to show people you're capable. I'm sure that
Sure,
went through
sure.
your mind, to show you're the big bad wolf and you can make things happen. But
Yep,
ultimately, that's kind of probably the opposite. But we'll touch on that in a bit here. So when you're hired in Miami, just recently, a couple months ago.
yep.
How have you begun kind of implementing your leadership strategies with the Marlins? I know you will get into hiring a staff and building, how teams work together. What were some of the key things that you visualized in terms of leadership for a staff when you're the guy in control now in Miami?
Sure, and I think it's knowing that you're going to be the main stakeholder, but never acting like you're the main stakeholder in that department. I
Hmm.
think that's number one. I think it's running alongside everybody that's already there, explaining to them early on that when there's something new or somebody new that comes in and we start creating or changing, if you will, that doesn't mean that was what was going on was bad, and now that you need it to be good. Most often it's already good or great. We just need to make it gooder or greater kind of mentality, right? So that was one of my things, because again, I've seen it in my career where new people come in and they want to either be the loudest voice in the room or the smartest person in the room or all of this, and they lose credit quickly that way. I've also seen people that want to just take a step back, and other people look at that as someone that's evaluating everything. And I want to make sure
Hmm.
that everybody
Sure.
knew coming in that I'm not looking at this year as, okay, we're going to evaluate for a year and then make some decisions. No, no, no. We've got who we want here. This is going
Yeah, that's a
we're
great
going to
point.
move forward as a team. We're going to do great things. But if I don't know where each individual wants to go in their career or how they want to take their next step, I can't do my job as a leader or a major stakeholder in an organization. So learning everybody on a personal level is going to be like my number one that I want to do with every person that works in sports medicine for the Marlins. We
Yep.
will create great programs. We will get players healthy. We will prevent injury. We will push envelopes. We will do things that we want to do as a group. But ultimately, if you're asking like what the main goal is and how I'm looking at the role is trying to to keep everybody moving in the same direction they already had been, because there's a lot of great things going on here, especially from the previous staff that really set up a lot of things for success here. And I'm going to ride a lot of those coattails, and I appreciate everything that was done by that group, because I do think that if you come in with a bulldozer, it's not as good of a situation as you just come in and say, hey, let's look at these blueprints together and see if we're still on track.
Yeah, and that's a great point. People have all different skills, strengths, weaknesses. This athletic trainer might be a great communicator. This guy might be better with his hands. This person may be better administratively. I've talked to a bunch of your colleagues across the league about this. So when you're in charge now, you're approaching building a staff, developing an effective athletic training group that works cohesively together. The question would be, do you develop that and hire as if kind of like your build an analysis might be you're building a basketball team. A point guard has this skill. Shooting guard, great shooter. Center is the big tall guy, back to the basket, whatever you want to call it. Everyone has different skills, and you want to kind of put those together like a puzzle without duplicating a lot. Is that kind of how you approach building an athletic training staff, by taking people with different skill sets who are experts in others, or do you just look for, the most well-rounded individuals who personally you think will be a great fit culture, or is it a combination of both?
It's a great question. And really that is how I use the analogy. I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan, being from North Jersey, you have to be. So my analogy is always, I refer to the team as a band, right? I want, the Big E Street Band. They've got a bunch of different people in that band. And when you're making it, you may have two guitarists, and that's okay. That's okay. And they may both be great. And we just have to make sure that they play well together and all that kind of stuff. But everybody's going to have a different instrument in the band. And to your point, if everybody's thinking alike, no one's thinking, right? So same thing. If everybody's playing the same thing on the same instrument, it's really not going to make for a great record. So you have to find those different pieces. And with the Marlins, we're looking for innovative people. We're looking at a visionary type person that's looking how we are going to, what we're doing today is going to affect us 3 to 5 years down the road. But most importantly, we're looking for good teammates. We're looking for great people around us. And we're taking the approach of, we're looking for those great teammates, those great clinicians, those people that are passionate about athletic training and sports medicine and baseball. And we will then take all of them and find out their skills and then start tailoring their job description to that versus the other way around. I think if you just go in, this is who we're looking for, that's not a great way of looking. It's okay, we're finding these individuals, we're identifying, and now let's see where they fit with our needs and what we want to accomplish. And then what that does is that allows everyone to really understand that at any given point, they're going to have that opportunity to have a solo during that song, and it might be Clarence on saxophone. It might be, Nils on guitar. It all depends. But at the end of the day, there will be one person making the set list, but everybody's going to have some say in how we get there and how that's created. But that's kind of my analogy on how I looked at helping create this team that we've put together.
Yeah, that's a great one. Makes total sense that there can be people with similar skill sets, but you're still going to provide them with different opportunities along the way. And ultimately, you're going to be leading it, creating the set list, like you said. Love hearing that. On that same note, no pun intended there. When you're hiring the staff, obviously the head athletic trainer leads, the assistants. It's just by name. That's kind of how it operates hierarchy-wise. Is that, would you call that the most important hire, like the leader of your on-field staff? I know LJ Petra, very experienced in San Francisco. He's the guy you hired over there in Miami. Is that the most important hire? Is it fair to say there's one more important than the other? How do you kind of navigate that process?
Yeah, I don't think that there's an importance level, more so just like the importance of finding the right person for that role. And sure. I think LJ is going to be an unbelievable head athletic trainer for us. I mean, he's from his leadership skills, his clinical skills, his communication skills, everything that we were looking for. And I know that the front office was looking for in a head athletic trainer like LJ is checks every one of those boxes. So I think ultimately what does come down for the head athletic trainer is you just want to surround that position with the right people so that there's success for everybody. And, if LJ is ever pulled out of the athletic training room, he has to be comfortable with who's in that athletic training room working on our athletes. So that was a big piece, was that including LJ and then the assistants and the minor league people in these conversations to make sure that we all felt comfortable with, if this person had to take a solo, that we were comfortable with that person taking a solo. So I think that's what it comes down to, is just like going back to having trust with those people, starting those relationships and feeling like this is a person that's going to be a great teammate, and identifying and making sure that instead of how important that role is, how important that person is for that role.
And I want to hear from you a bit about, you've been through so many interviews yourself, for multiple positions, but also for so many hires you made in the past couple months, very recently. So this is all very, very fresh for you. What qualities, do you look for when making key hires within the Marlins organization? I know there's going to be different qualities for different positions, but when you sit down across from somebody and you're considering them as part of your staff, is there something that you start with, something that helps you make a final decision? I know you're very passionate about leadership and working together with people. So are there certain things that you kind of key in on during these interviews?
Sure. First of all, most of us, or I would say the majority of athletic trainers, physical therapists, physicians that work with professional baseball teams are in that 1% of our profession, right?
Absolutely.
And not in a way of like arrogance, but just in when you start looking at resumes, there's very few holes or gaps in a lot of professional baseball athletic trainers, physical therapist resumes. So to that end, when I have a mentor or a colleague that reaches out on someone's behalf, I'm already assuming that they're a great clinician.
Sure.
And again, it goes back to, I could work with player A and LJ could work with player A, and they might just respond better to LJ. We might do the exact same intervention. But so I'm not as concerned a lot of the time with reciting of the resume from somebody that I'm looking to hire. But it's knowing that going in, okay, we can check that box. They're going to be a great clinician and they come highly recommended. Perfect. Those are two big things, because if the people that they're working with currently don't want to lose them, that's a good sign, that they feel that they're a great person and a great teammate and a great clinician, but need that next step in their career. For me, it's a lot of the softer skills and the personality and the personal side of it. And again, it doesn't have to be someone that just meshes totally with me or LJ or any of the other clinicians on our staff. But it ultimately is this person going to challenge me? Am I going to be able to challenge this person? What does this person feel success looks like for an athletic trainer or for a physical therapist or team physician? Because I think that goes a long way when you ask somebody what they feel success is, and it really shows you who they are. Do they feel that success is IL days or injuries, or is it walking resumes is what I always call it, is when the player goes to another organization, I always ask, like, hey, you were with Oakland. What did you think of Brian? Oh, Brian's the best. I know that Brian, if he tells me a name, he's going to give me a good name. And that's how we got, Brad LaRosa from Oakland. So it's just things along those lines. That's what I look at for when we're talking with possible additions to our team is, does this person fit in a way to make us better? And do they want something more out of their career, and not necessarily in a position where they're going to do whatever it takes to advance themselves. But I do appreciate people that come in and go, hey, I want to break a few windows. Let's not burn the house down, but we can break a few windows. And that's the kind of attitude and person that we're trying to identify.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes total sense there. One interesting point you mentioned is A lot of times there's athletic trainers across the league who have great assistants and they do not want to lose them. But, you always want people to move on and further their growth as a professional. I talk about Ken Crenshaw and his kind of athletic training tree a lot. Kyle Torgerson, Ryan DePamphilo, Ryan Eubanks, so many people across the league who've
Yep.
learned under Ken. And he wants those people to get better, to grow, and to leave, but it's also kind of a catch-22 because he wants to keep great people around him. You guys have a young staff. I think many people would agree. How did you kind of balance the providing new opportunities to people who are ready for those, but also needing people in your corner with big league experience as well?
So that was absolutely kind of our mindset, was making sure that we had experience, so that we had, people that had major league experience on top of minor league experience. And,
Mm-hmm.
but then it was also an opportunity, we felt, that we could go out and identify some individuals that, excuse me, don't necessarily have major league experience, but have that drive, that really the only thing they're missing from their CV or resume is big league experience. And to be honest with you, that's where I came in. It was,
Yeah.
the organization had to take a leap of faith on me, to be honest with you, that they had to look at somebody and say, well, he's never worked as a major league athletic trainer before. Sure, he's been around major league camps and big league stadiums and big league players, but a day to day is much different. So we had to make sure that we identified those that did have that, but also felt like this was the organization, and at the right time, at the right moment, in the right situation, where we could give some runway to some people that need that box checked on their resume to move forward. And I think that
Yep.
we were able to do that with like Drew Scott and Vic Scarpone, and Jose Alvarez is coming into his second year, but more a defined role. And Mike Chamberlain, who's going to be our physical therapist. Again, all really brand new. Jose does have a year, but a lot of them are first time at the big league level, traveling with the big league team. And I think that ultimately the main separator for a lot of major league and minor league athletic trainers is opportunity. And
Yep.
we had the opportunity to give opportunity here, even as far as looking at our manager in Clayton McCullough, who was the first base coach for the LA Dodgers, had a lot of success in that role and in that organization, but he needed to find the opportunity to be a major league manager, and that's where the Miami Marlins stepped in. So I do think when you are that person or that group that gives opportunity to people, the amount of work and the amount of loyalty and the amount of trust that they're going to give back to you is going to be insurmountable. So that's what's exciting about the staff that we've kind of put together here.
Yeah, that's awesome that you're able to provide not just you but the team and the club, and
For sure.
it gives you the power to be able to provide that next step and that leap and that growth for many athletic trainers. A couple you mentioned, Brad LaRosa coming over from Oakland, referred from Brian Shulman. Vic Scarpone comes from the Dodgers. I'm sure you may have spoke with Ron Porterfield. Along those same lines, how much do you lean on Brian and Ronnie and other guys who you're very close with, you've known forever, for information about how those younger athletic trainers operate? Or do you want to, I know you obviously want to get in front of them and speak with them, but how much info do you like to gather from people around the league who have worked with these guys to begin with?
I think it's really important. I think it's I definitely lean on those individuals that you just mentioned, from Todd Tomzak to Ron Porterfield to Brian Schulman
Yep.
to Jamie Reed. These were all individuals that I called on about individuals and helping me kind of see the vision of what we were going to accomplish. And Roger Kaplinger was also instrumental. I know he's retired, but he still is a great voice and always gives me the advice I need on things like that. So it was absolutely, because I also know that what they tell me about those individuals and how they tell me about those individuals is really going to help me get to where I think that they're giving me the honest information. If they just tell me that, oh yeah, no, this guy's great, players love him, it's like, well, there's a lot of people that's great and players love him. But
Yep.
when Ron is telling me that Vic is a natural leader and he has grown X, Y, and Z, and he's going to be a head athletic trainer one day. And when, TT tells me that what Drew has done for their organization and how he collaborates and how he is a visionary, like all those things are what we're looking for, right? Because again, we're going to be able to figure out how to help a player get healthy. I really do believe that, but are we going to create an atmosphere where there's trust, where there's relationships, where there's an environment where players want to get healthy? Herm Schneider always told me this when I was a young athletic trainer, was a player can will themselves to get better and they can will themselves to stay hurt. And I do believe that to some degree, that if your atmosphere and your environment is not conducive for a player to get better, it's very difficult. So you have those individuals that are looking for something more out of themselves, out of their team, out of the profession. And when you put all that into a room, you'll have some conflict here and there, but that's okay. But ultimately, I think we're going to get to a spot where the players just feel that excitement of coming to work every day and that energy of doing the job every day that our staff's going to bring.
Yep, totally. And I think it's interesting, you guys being in Miami, you hear a lot about Heat culture for the Miami Heat and the NBA for those who are unaware. Pat Riley from the top down, you just hear that the culture there it's tough, but it is probably the most widely talked about culture in sports, you might say. How do you kind of grasp with culture when it's not really something you can objectively explain or define, but you can kind of feel it when you're in an organization? You're in charge of building the culture in the athletic training room and just the performance department in Miami. What's most important to you that for example, your athletic trainers, people working with you and for you, they go away to another organization. What do you want them to bring? And we're like, Corey taught me this, or I learned this from Corey. What's most important to you there?
Sure. When it comes to culture, I have a little bit of a different vision and idea of culture. I think that individuals get too much credit for culture a lot of the time. And I'm not saying the Pat Riley's of the world, and trust me, I've read every one of his books, and John Wooden and even Ted Lasso. I mean, we're talking about, everyone wants to give a lot of credit to the individuals, and rightfully so. But I do think it's what the individual allows the group to create, the content. That's what creates the culture. I think back to when I was in Detroit, and when I still hear that certain things that I had a major part in helping create is still being used. That to me is culture. That to me is what we did as a team, what we created as a group, has lasting emphasis well past one person's departure. And that would be what I hope, if anybody's said to, or asked any of our clinicians or athletes or our front office, like, what is the culture for sports medicine, or how has the culture shifted or changed or anything like that? I would say that if they're saying their collaboration to create and their ability to flex and bend to various, opinions and thought processes, and having a really team-focused ego versus, a personal ego, I think that then we're winning. Then that's what builds culture. And I would say that that's what people like John Wooden and Pat Riley and those individuals have really helped create there in those organizations, is the ability for everybody to have a voice, for their ability to help bring something to the table, to make something better than what's already there. And I think if you're able to do that, if you're able to give the autonomy and the tools to the other individuals in the group to create and to make better and to problem solve and critically think and really give that runway, I think that's where a lot of our value comes from for culture building.
Yeah. And I want to end with this, awesome talking to you as always about, your new experiences, time in Miami, leadership stuff you're extremely knowledgeable and passionate about. You've done a ton of awesome stuff in your career. You've won minor league coordinator of the year multiple times, done a great job with the Tigers, worked with some awesome people. Is building a staff in Miami, would you call it one of the most challenging but also rewarding moments so far in your career?
Absolutely. It's 100%. I think about how I would probably have viewed this 10 years ago versus today. I probably would have said 10 years ago, I created a team. This is great. Versus now I'm looking at it going, I can't wait to see this team succeed. I can't wait to see these individuals work together. And, it kind of hit me between the eyes this last off season or at the end of the season. And again, it's all context and it's all perspective on how you're looking at things. Like, I love the fact that my peers and colleagues felt that I was, someone that they felt they could vote for awards or accolades or anything like that. And again, like early on, I thought that that's where if I had success, then my team had success. And like I said, I was absolutely wrong and just looked at it from the wrong lens. And, this last off season, I had 2 phone calls from 2 athletic trainers working with 2 organizations that I had the opportunity to help hire with Detroit that were named Athletic Trainer of the Year this year. And they just called to thank me for, giving them the opportunities and all this throughout there. And again, they did it. They did it all. Their work is what awarded that. And that's, to me, where I kind of look through that lens more and more now, and especially with team building, it's definitely not what I or LJ or whomever, Gabe or Peter, it's we're just giving the opportunity for this garden to grow, and we're just going to be there with a watering pail and just see how it goes.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And Corey, it's been awesome to see your success and get to know you in the game and your growth as an athletic trainer and really just getting to where you belong. I would say, I think we both agree this is an awesome landing spot for you.
Thank you.
Always appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your expertise, and we wish you and the staff nothing but the best of luck this coming year in Miami.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. For more information about PBATS and athletic training, visit pbats.com. See you next time.